Welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast, a production from Empowering Pumps and Equipment as the voice of the pump and related equipment industries. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast. I'm your host, Charli Matthews, and I'm super excited to be here. I am actually recording from my home, which I think is really great that you can't really tell from my little virtual screen here. But I am excited because I get to bring you a new special guest that I met online. And I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. I mean, first of all, he has his own podcast. So anytime that I can talk with a fellow podcaster and send some people his way, I think that's going to be great. So without further delay, Noah, will you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Fantastic. Thank you. And I really appreciate you introducing people to my podcast, hopefully. I am Noah Graff. I host the podcast Swarfcast. It's for people in precision machining. I have a few other hats. I am a machinery dealer, a used machinery dealer for my day job. That is what pays the mortgage. And we also have a B2B magazine. Well, it used to be now it's entirely digital. It's called Today's Machining World, and the podcast came out of that.
Don't you think it's so funny how you have to explain that, the magazine portion? I would think everybody would just know what we were talking about. We're all digital too. We always say digital first here, even though we've printed a magazine.
You used to be print as well.
Yeah. So it's just
sometimes it just naturally rolls off the tongue of the magazine.
Right. That's right. Okay. So you find people's, leftover equipment, and what is that like?
All right. So there's different ways to find the stuff we sell. Sometimes people's companies are going under and maybe they want to liquidate. Often, probably the nicest stuff comes when you have a company that they have pretty late model equipment, but they're really, really fancy and they want to replace it with even newer equipment. Sometimes we buy for stock, sometimes we don't, and sometimes we buy from other dealers. Sometimes we buy machines in Europe. We bought some machines in Asia. It's all about buying things in places that other people don't know about. You have to do something different that your competitors aren't doing, whether that be going overseas, whether that be just, I mean, I've bought machines in the strangest places. Like I was in Slovenia and there was a machine that was literally in a barn and you could hear cows mooing in the wall next door.
So, okay, so I'm just kind of blown away. We've been talking a lot about circularity and like when equipment fails, what happens to it. But I haven't really thought about as the equipment is still working and everything is fine, people upgrading, what do they do with it? But this is more on the precision machining side. So these big CNC machines and that kind of thing is what we're talking about.
CNC
I'm just
machines,
imagining.
And we specifically specialize in what are known as screw machines. Mm-hmm. So they make all the cylindrical parts that go into everything from an airplane to a pencil sharpener to the pipe fittings. And these are generally for very high volume. We're talking like hundreds of thousands, millions of parts.
It must be so much fun to go to one of the trade shows like the IMTS show and see all of those machines.
It is pretty cool, but a lot of the machines that we sell and the ones that we make the most money on aren't even at IMTS because these multi-spindle screw machines that make hundreds of thousands of parts, they have CNC ones and they have the mechanical ones. Now the mechanical ones, I usually say, like, if a mechanical screw machine like an Acme or a Wickman, for instance, if it was built after I was born, it's pretty late model. So if it's like in the 80s, like it's actually pretty modern. And so these machines, people might pay anywhere from 20 grand to 150 grand, depending on if it's been like refurbished or rebuilt. And then if you wanted to buy one brand new, the problem is you'll pay like $1 million or $2 million. So sometimes often the parts are not complicated enough or precise enough to warrant spending $2 million on a machine.
Well, that's
So
where you come in, right? And you can
that's
have
where
time.
we
Yeah.
come in, right? Because and the other good thing about mechanical machines is you can keep fixing them, whereas CNC machines, it's like, if a computer is 20 years old, it's hard to use. People do when it comes to these machines, but
It
like
reminds me.
once you get 25, once you get in the mid 90s, like, it's crazy. Like we'll have these machines and they literally have a floppy disk that goes into them, and it's you don't even have like a computer that you could put the floppy disk in. So it's an adventure.
I think I would love to sit, have dinner with you and just talk about this, because we were just the electric vehicles and the waste and everything that's going to be created from that. People don't know how to fix them. Going on and on. I love technology. I love innovation and things moving forward. I think it was Ryan with the maintenance community that was like, well, what are we going to do with all of these electric vehicles that nobody can actually repair? So anyway, it was just kind of an interesting topic. I feel like we could go on and on about that. I do want to know how you got into the industry. We kind of jumped ahead, but
That's okay.
Tell us, how did you find your way here?
It's nepotism. My grandfather started our business 80 years ago, and so I grew up around it. I always seemed like something, maybe it would be like a fallback type thing. I was interested in film. I majored in film at University of Wisconsin, and then I spent a little bit of time in Italy after school, and then I came back, and I was kind of at a crossroads. I didn't know whether I wanted to go to Hollywood or whether I wanted to, get some internships. I tried a few things, and then my dad, he had started Today's Machining World about 5 years before. So he went into the screw machine business, the used machinery business, when he was, I don't know, late 20s. But he had a master's in journalism from University of Michigan, and he had been kind of dabbling in journalism in connection with the machinery business for a while. He had this publication called the Graff-Pinkert Times. It was a print magazine, and then in around 2000, he took the plunge and decided to start Today's Machining World. I was still in college at the time. And so I'm 25, and he's like, look, broadband's coming. And so this is 2005. We'll make videos. It'll go with the articles. And he was just like, unfortunately, like 2-3 years ahead of his time.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided, all right, I'll try it out. I was making training videos about the machines, and I started writing articles for the magazine and coming up with ideas for that. And so, that it just kind of became more immersed in that world, kept making some video projects on the side. And then about 2011, 2010 came, and we said, print is dead. Let's just take the whole thing online, and I'll try the machinery business, because it was a chance to travel and meet lots of interesting people and have some movement in my life. So that's what we did. And so since then, I've been doing this around 12 years, but then I kept doing Today's Machining World online. It's mainly, it's a blog. We publish original blogs twice a week. And my dad, he writes a blog on Wednesday, and then I do a podcast or a blog on Friday. And so, and the two businesses kind of feed off each other. People know one and they call about a machine. The magazine or the blog and the podcast, they make a little bit of money, not enough money to live off of, but it's like a funnel, that brings people to the other business, and they work hand in hand. And also it just keeps us interested. We need this creative outlet. I think both he and I think we'd just get bored and stale if we didn't have Today's Machining World and Swarfcast. I'd
Yeah,
have
I
to
think
have some
that's
other
true.
side thing.
Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of people, to be able to, have interests, and that be part of their work. And so I think if I had met you 12 years ago, that would have been a lot of fun, because we were definitely on the same page, looking at your site and kind of the love of the creation part, right? The video, the storytelling, all of that comes with journalism and videography is just, I love that. So I also love the fashion industry, and me and my husband always jokes about that, right? That I'm in this male populated industry and wanting to be in fashion. And but now we have the Empowering Women in Industry conference, where we have an industry fashion show. So it does kind of, I think it just comes out of you, right? It's part of who you are and what you wanted to do with these videos, and you're teaching people in the industry, and your family is involved with that. So it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, again, like, as I've gotten older, I reflect on purpose and, why are you doing X? What value do you leave on the world? What mark do you leave on the world? That's another reason why I like the podcast or the blog. You reach, thousands of people. With the machinery business, you can say, all right, well, I'm empowering somebody to start a business, to buy a machine they couldn't afford otherwise. And it's important to remember that sometimes, because sometimes you just get distracted with, I'm going to buy this for one price and I'm going to sell it for another price, and I'm going to feed my family doing that. And there's purpose in that as well. But, to have more meaning in what you do, that's important to me. And sometimes I think that's more tangible when you're doing something like a podcast. But I appreciate both. And the machinery business has a lot of interesting things, and it is what gives me content to do the blog and the podcast.
So I'm interested. I read something on your profiles and stuff, and we, you know, there's this word serendipity, and you use it in the same sentence of like strategy, which sort of kind of feels a little, what do you call it? They just don't go together. So tell me a little bit about what you mean by that.
Yeah. Okay. So it all started when I interviewed a guy for a podcast a couple years ago. I heard him on a podcast, and then I was like, oh, I have to interview this guy. His name is Christian Bush, and he wrote a book called The Serendipity Mindset, which is about how there's various things you can do to create serendipity, to create your own luck. And then we reflected on the machinery business, and it's so much about that. It's about connecting the dots. It's about, you heard about this machine today from one dealer, and then you just talked to another dealer and he said, oh, he was looking for it. And then, the stars come together, and all of a sudden you you find this treasure. I like to call myself a treasure hunter. It's a lot more romantic than I buy gross, oily iron and sell it to another person, because it really is treasure. We go all over, and kind of energizes you to think about it like that. I'll call other dealers and I'll be like, so do you have any treasure?
I love that.
So the serendipity, it really got us thinking. We knew that the business revolved around serendipity, but it hadn't really clicked until I met this guy and learned about a lot of his tools to make you even luckier in your life. And if you're looking for, maybe you want to change your life, maybe you need to build your business and meet this right person that's going to make a difference in your life, there are strategies, serendipity strategies, that I can tell you about, that this guy writes about in his book, and that now I like to talk about in our podcast. I go back and I'm like, all right, what am I, because you can't get an interview all the time. Sometimes, we interview a lot of people in our business, a lot of customers, people who talk about how they're running their shop different. We ran a rerun last week about a guy who was talking about how he retains employees, because that's something that everybody keeps crying about. We can't find enough employees. Or the week before, we interviewed somebody talking about how you have to secure your computer database if you're supplying to the government. So we'll do that. But when we don't have an interview, I like to do a solo podcast, in which case I usually give a nice yarn about a machinery deal and how serendipity led me to make this deal. And it's really one of the main things that fuels our business.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, I was telling you before, I feel like I'm still that salesperson at heart. No matter, I do have to do a lot of the, running of the company, which is a little different, but the conversations that you have with people and going into that networking, if you will, that dirty word of networking for a lot of people, it really is just building relationships. And if you're talking to somebody and listening, and they're able to tell you what they need help with, then you're going to remember that, hopefully, when you're talking to somebody else and they say, hey, I need this. And you remember that those two people need to meet. And I think that's we love calling ourselves power connectors now. I love that. And I'll give you that too, Noah, if you'd like to be a power connector. But it's just that you're always connecting, you're always thinking about it. And that's where you see these things come together, because you're paying attention. And so I do believe in that. I love Serendipity. That's a movie as well. That's really fun to watch.
I haven't seen it yet, and I totally need to see it.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, I liked it, but I'm a romantic like that. I guess the big picture for people here is that, one, we need marketers, journalists, videos within this space of equipment and machinery and engineering and manufacturing. And so if you are one of those creative people, don't think it's not a space for you. And then if you, are one of those people that aren't creative, then think, okay, who can I work with that is on my team?
Everybody's got some creativity in them.
I love
some
that.
people have been told all their lives that they're not. And sure, some people are, Picasso or Steve Jobs, and some aren't. But there's always certain creativity things you could do if you were able to learn to free your mind.
Absolutely. 100% agree. Okay. If there was some advice that you could give someone coming into our industry, what would you say to them?
As a machinery dealer?
It could be anything. You could call it media industry, or you could call it equipment? You can give both if you have two different sets of
Yeah, well,
devices.
I think in a way both, because with the media, you're trying to get a story,
Mhm.
you know. So I would say, be really have your eyes open and follow your nudges. Like every day I tell myself in the morning I have a few different things I say. I have this list. I say, I am a serendipity magnet. I create, I see, and I seize opportunity everywhere. And I say I'm following my nudges wherever, however, whenever they push me. So, you get an instinct, and there are various. I can tell you about a few of these tricks.
Go for it.
That
Yeah, we
you
have
can
a few more
use.
minutes.
All right. I do appreciate you keeping things brief, but because people only have so much time to listen to podcasts.
I'm curious. I was also not wanting to take all of the tips and send people over to listen, which we definitely have to do. But tell us a
Oh
couple
no. Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So, okay. So there's something called, and this is taken from Christian Bush. It's called serendipity hooks. So you talk about a lot about networking, etc. When you're networking, say you're at a conference and you're mingling and somebody asks you what you do for a living, which is, it's not exactly the nicest thing to ask somebody. I know people do, partly just because they, they're just showing interest, but I don't know, sometimes it seems like they're evaluating you. Anyways, if somebody says what you do, what I do, I don't say I'm a machinery dealer and that's it, because first of all, they're just going to go, huh? What I would say would be, I'm a machinery dealer and I'm also a podcaster. And, but I've been spending a lot of my time with my 1-year-old. And when I have a little bit extra time, I go salsa dancing. And all of a sudden you have like 4 things to talk about. You never know what chord you're going to strike with people. So maybe if I'm calling somebody about a machine, they inquired about a Citizen screw machine. Okay. Before I call them, I'll go on their website and I'll look and be like, okay. Not only do they have Citizens, but they have a Star machine. I have a Star machine in stock. So when I call them, I'm going to be like, oh, by the way, we have Star machines.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden you strike a new chord, because maybe they didn't even really want the Citizen machine. Maybe they really, they were just curious. And often when you call people and in sales and you say, so are you looking for anything? Are you looking to sell anything? They go, no, we're fine. But then when you bring up something that they have and they happen to like, they go, oh yeah, send me information about that. So that's one thing. Another thing is what they call serendipity bombs. So say this is where, you pick out, say, the 5 people who might be able to help you with something, and they may be long shots. So say you have like 5 dream guests for your podcast. You pick them out and you write to all of them. And, it's like bombing a football. Some of them very well may actually connect. And you wouldn't have done that if you hadn't just said, what the hell, I'm just going to email these people. And if you have this sort of framework of how you're going to do it, then, things happen.
That's what happened. Noah just emailed me, and here we are today.
I mean, I could tell you, like, all right, do you have time for one more story, or?
Yep. Yep.
All right. So here's a serendipity bomb. Like, so we had this index multi-spindle screw machine. Uh, this was like from around 1999 or whatever. Cost a couple $100,000. I had a guy in Brazil who was interested in this machine. The machine was located in Germany. So we meet up in Germany, in Stuttgart, and then we drive like 3 hours to get to this machine. Get to the machine, the guy likes it, and he's like, okay, well, I just need to go back to my boss. I just need a couple days. And I was like, look, I can hold this machine for you, but I don't control it. And there really are no holds in this business. And he's like, all right, well, this is what I can do. So sure enough, I stay in that area or back in Stuttgart or whatever. Next day, I call the guy who owned the machine, and he's like, I'm sorry, it's been sold. This poor guy, he went all the way up there from Brazil. I went all the way up there from Chicago. It's sold. So I normally leave a little bit back when I wasn't married with a kid and I had more time. I would leave time in, when I traveled some far off place, because you never know what kind of serendipity can happen while you're there. Like, I just know, okay, I'm going to go visit this person since I'm there, visit this person, So I'm just lying in bed going, oh man, I don't know what a waste. And I decide, all right, I'm going to call my guy Javier in Spain, in Barcelona, who we've sold like the most of these machines to. I'd love to just go to Barcelona. Wouldn't it be great if there was an excuse to go there, right? I said, do you have anything for sale? He says, oh yeah, actually I have this, I have these two MS-42Cs for sale, like the exact same machine that I had flew to Stuttgart for. I'm like, all right, I'm going to Barcelona.
That's
Get on
awesome.
a plane, go to Barcelona, got these machines. I call my guy Rogério in Brazil, tell him about it. He's like, all right, well, this is great. I can, but I can't come back for several weeks. Like, all right, fly home. And then my wife, she just lost her job like that week or something. And I'm like, hey, look, finally Rogério could go up there from Brazil. And I was like, hey, you want to just like come to Spain with me? You don't have a job, right? So we fly up to Barcelona. We make this deal on the machine, make a great score. And then, then we just traveled around. We went to I went and visited a whole bunch of other people with machines. It was like, oh, there's a machine in Italy this guy wants to sell, and there's a machine in Sweden, and there was a machine. And it was just like, we call it our first honeymoon. It was like the most, everybody said, oh, you didn't ask her to marry her when at the time. And I was like, I don't know, I should have. But it was like the greatest trip. We sold this amazing machine, and it was all because I just tried things. I didn't just say, all right, well, whatever. He came and it was no good. I said, all right, well, I'm in Europe. Let's try something. Let's call somebody else. Let's throw a serendipity bomb. And then I connected the dots, and sure enough, there we go. It was like an amazing deal, amazing trip. So that's the kind of thing you can happen if you talk to a lot of people, if you say the right thing, if you keep your eyes open, then hopefully you can find some magic and find some luck.
I love this so much. What a story. And I'm glad she said yes. I'm glad all of the people said yes. And then I'm glad that guy sold the equipment, right? So basically he said no, which turned into a really great adventure.
Yeah, like we were way better off that the first guy said no.
That's right. That's right. Which is such a good lesson for all of us. And, I think, again, I could talk to you forever, and just because I love travel for one. And this talking with our clients, trying to solve the problem for them, and just looking for opportunity. All of that just rings true for me too. What if people want to get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, you can find my podcast at Swarfcast.com. It's SWARF, as in Frank. cast.com. You can email me at noah@Graff-Pinkert.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Noah Graff. And you can also find my contact information at todaysmachiningworld.com, or our machinery business is Graff-Pinkert.com. So that's a few places to find me. Hopefully somebody will remember it, but I'm hoping people want to check out Swarfcast. That would be, or Today's Machining World. That would be great. Or
Both.
if you need a machine, now you know where to go.
There you go. That is it. That is the message here. And thank you so much for sharing your story and, just some resources. I can't wait to go and check out the book and the podcast, if it's still live, that you can send of that interview that you
so when you go to Today's Machining World, and I totally should have remembered what number it is, but look up Christian Bush on the podcast. Hang on, I can find it if you just.
Yeah, I can, and we can both do that and put it in the link for everybody in the show notes. And so, again, love to continue the conversation, Noah. If people are not subscribed to Empowering Pumps, podcast, then please do that. So Empowering Industry Podcast, Empowering Pumps and Equipment is our media brand that supports that, which we are so thankful for all of our partners. So please do that, share, all that fun stuff. And until next time, be empowering.